Welcome to the Discourse Analyzer AI Toolkit, where articles come alive. You're listening to the audio version of our article. For the full text and an interactive experience, check out the link in the description below. Interact with any selection using our AI assistant to enhance your understanding. Let's explore.
The role of neuroscience in discourse analysis. Neuroscience contributes to discourse analysis by providing insights into the brain processes that underlie language comprehension, production, and interpretation. By integrating neuroscience with discourse analysis, researchers can explore how the brain engages with language in social contexts, how cognitive processes shape discourse, and how discourse influences neural activity and cognitive functions. This interdisciplinary approach helps to bridge the gap between linguistic behavior and the underlying neural mechanisms, offering a more comprehensive understanding of how discourse is processed at the neurological level. 1. Key contributions of neuroscience to discourse analysis. Understanding language processing in the brain. Neuroscience helps to elucidate how different areas of the brain are involved in processing language during discourse. This includes brain regions involved in language, studying areas such as Broca's area, associated with language production, and Wernicke's area, associated with language comprehension, to understand their roles in discourse processing. Neural pathways. Examining how neural networks in the brain connect these regions and support the integration of syntax, semantics, and pragmatics in discourse. Real-time language processing. Using techniques like fMRI and EEG to observe how the brain processes language in real time, providing insights into how discourse is understood and produced as it unfolds. Cognitive functions and discourse. Neuroscience provides a deeper understanding of the cognitive functions that support discourse. This includes working memory, investigating how the brain maintains and manipulates information in working memory during the comprehension and production of discourse, particularly when processing complex sentences or maintaining coherence over long stretches of text. Attention. Studying how attentional mechanisms in the brain help focus on relevant aspects of discourse, filter out distractions, and sustain engagement throughout communication. Inference and prediction. Exploring how the brain makes predictions about upcoming linguistic input and infers meaning based on context, helping to anticipate what comes next in a conversation or text. Emotional and social aspects of discourse. Neuroscience also sheds light on how the brain processes the emotional and social dimensions of discourse. This includes emotion and affect, examining how emotional content in discourse is processed by the brain, particularly in regions like the amygdala and prefrontal cortex, and how this influences comprehension and memory. Empathy and theory of mind. Investigating how the brain's ability to understand others' perspectives, theory of mind, and empathize with them is engaged during discourse, particularly in social interactions or narrative contexts. Social cognition. Understanding how social norms, expectations, and roles are encoded in the brain and how they influence language use and interpretation during discourse. Point 2. Methods integrating neuroscience and discourse analysis. Neuroimaging techniques. Neuroimaging techniques allow researchers to visualize and measure brain activity during discourse processing. Key methods include functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI. This technique measures brain activity by detecting changes in blood flow, helping to identify which brain areas are involved in different aspects of discourse processing, such as syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. Electroencephalography, EEG. EEG records electrical activity in the brain, providing insights into the timing of neural processes involved in discourse comprehension, such as the detection of syntactic anomalies or semantic incongruities. Magnetoencephalography, MEG. MEG measures the magnetic fields produced by neural activity, offering precise temporal and spatial information about how the brain processes language during discourse. Cognitive neuroscience experiments. Experiments in cognitive neuroscience are designed to investigate specific aspects of discourse processing by manipulating linguistic variables and observing their effects on brain activity. This includes sentence processing studies, examining how the brain processes complex sentences, ambiguous language, or garden path sentences, revealing the neural mechanisms of syntactic and semantic processing. Narrative comprehension studies. investigating how the brain processes extended narratives, focusing on coherence, character development, and emotional engagement. Social interaction studies, exploring how the brain processes language in social contexts, such as conversations, debates, or collaborative tasks, to understand the neural basis of social communication. Neuropsychological approaches. Neuropsychological studies focus on how brain injuries or disorders affect discourse abilities, providing insights into the neural underpinnings of language. This includes aphasia research, studying patients with aphasia, language impairments due to brain injury, to understand how different brain regions contribute to various aspects of discourse, such as fluency, coherence, and pragmatics. Neurodevelopmental disorders, investigating how conditions like autism spectrum disorder, ASD, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, affect discourse processing, particularly in terms of social communication and narrative skills. Neurodegenerative diseases, exploring how diseases like Alzheimer's affect discourse abilities, such as memory for narratives, coherence, and the ability to follow complex conversations. Point 3. Applications of neuroscience insights in discourse analysis. Educational settings. Neuroscience can inform discourse analysis in educational contexts by providing insights into how students process language and how discourse can be tailored to enhance learning. Applications include reading comprehension, understanding the neural mechanisms of reading comprehension to develop strategies that improve students' ability to understand and retain complex texts. Language learning, investigating how the brain processes second language discourse, offering insights into effective teaching methods and materials. Cognitive load, analyzing how different types of discourse affect cognitive load, helping educators design instructional materials that optimize student engagement and understanding. Clinical and therapeutic contexts. Neuroscience can enhance the understanding of discourse in clinical settings, particularly in diagnosing and treating language disorders. Applications include speech therapy, using insights from neuroscience to develop targeted therapies for individuals with aphasia or other language impairments, focusing on rebuilding neural pathways involved in discourse processing. Cognitive rehabilitation, designing interventions for individuals with neurodegenerative diseases that aim to maintain or improve discourse abilities, such as narrative coherence and conversational skills. Mental health, understanding how discourse reflects cognitive and emotional states in mental health conditions, helping clinicians to better diagnose and treat patients. Media and communication. Neuroscience can inform discourse analysis in media and communication by exploring how audiences process media content at the neural level. Applications include media engagement, investigating how the brain processes narratives in film, television, and digital media, providing insights into what makes content engaging and memorable. Advertising and persuasion, analyzing how persuasive language in advertisements affects neural processes related to decision-making and emotion, helping to optimize messaging strategies. Social media discourse, exploring how the brain processes the rapid, fragmented discourse typical of social media, and how this impacts cognition, attention, and social behavior. Point 4. Challenges and considerations. Complexity of neural data. Interpretability. Neural data can be complex and difficult to interpret, particularly when trying to draw connections between specific brain regions and discourse functions. Individual differences. There are significant individual differences in brain structure and function, which can complicate the generalization of findings from neuroscience studies to broader populations. Ethical considerations. Privacy. The use of neuroimaging data raises privacy concerns, particularly when it comes to the potential for misuse in areas like neuromarketing or behavioral manipulation. Neuroethics. Researchers must consider the ethical implications of using neuroscience to influence discourse, particularly in contexts like education, advertising, or politics. Conclusion. Neuroscience plays an important role in discourse analysis by providing insights into the brain processes that underlie language comprehension, production, and interpretation. By integrating neuroscience with discourse analysis, researchers can explore how cognitive functions, emotional processing, and social cognition shape discourse, and how discourse, in turn, influences neural activity. This interdisciplinary approach enhances the understanding of how language operates at both the behavioral and neural levels, offering valuable insights for education, clinical practice, media, and communication. However, the complexity of neural data and ethical considerations must be carefully managed to ensure responsible and effective use of neuroscience in discourse analysis. Frequently asked questions: how does neuroscience contribute to discourse analysis? Neuroscience contributes to discourse analysis by providing insights into the brain processes that underlie language comprehension, production, and interpretation. By studying how different brain regions are involved in processing language, neuroscience helps to understand the cognitive mechanisms that shape discourse and how discourse, in turn, influences neural activity and cognitive functions. Which brain regions are involved in language processing during discourse? Key brain regions involved in language processing include Broca's area, associated with language production and syntax processing. Wernicke's area, linked to language comprehension and semantic processing. Prefrontal cortex, involved in complex cognitive functions like planning, attention, and working memory, all of which are crucial for discourse processing. Amygdala, plays a role in processing the emotional content of discourse. How do neuroscientists study real-time language processing in the brain? Neuroscientists use neuroimaging techniques such as functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, measures brain activity by detecting changes in blood flow, helping identify which brain areas are active during language tasks. Electroencephalography, EEG, records electrical activity in the brain, providing insights into the timing of neural processes during discourse. Magnetoencephalography, MEG, measures magnetic fields produced by neural activity, offering precise information about how the brain processes language in real time. What cognitive functions are crucial for processing discourse? Critical cognitive functions for processing discourse include working memory, maintains and manipulates information during discourse comprehension and production. Attention, helps focus on relevant aspects of discourse, filtering out distractions. Inference and prediction, enables the brain to anticipate upcoming linguistic input and infer meaning based on context. How does neuroscience help in understanding the emotional and social aspects of discourse? Neuroscience examines how the brain processes the emotional and social dimensions of discourse by studying emotion and affect, investigating how emotional content in discourse is processed by regions like the amygdala and prefrontal cortex. Empathy and theory of mind, exploring how the brain understands others' perspectives and emotional states during social interactions or narrative discourse. Social cognition, understanding how social norms and expectations are encoded in the brain and influence language use and interpretation. What methods from neuroscience are integrated into discourse analysis? Methods from neuroscience that are integrated into discourse analysis include neuroimaging techniques, such as fMRI, EEG, and MEG, to visualize and measure brain activity during discourse processing. Cognitive neuroscience experiments, designed to investigate specific aspects of discourse processing by manipulating linguistic variables and observing neural responses. Neuropsychological approaches, studying how brain injuries or disorders affect discourse abilities to understand the neural underpinnings of language. How can neuroscience inform discourse analysis in educational settings? Neuroscience can enhance discourse analysis in education by reading comprehension, understanding the neural mechanisms behind reading to improve strategies for teaching complex texts. Language learning, exploring how the brain processes second language discourse to optimize teaching methods. Cognitive load, analyzing the impact of different discourse types on cognitive load, helping educators design materials that enhance engagement and understanding. What role does neuroscience play in clinical and therapeutic contexts of discourse analysis? In clinical and therapeutic contexts, neuroscience aids in speech therapy, developing targeted therapies for language impairments, focusing on rebuilding neural pathways involved in discourse processing. Cognitive rehabilitation, designing interventions for neurodegenerative diseases to maintain or improve discourse abilities. Mental health, understanding how discourse reflects cognitive and emotional states in mental health conditions to improve diagnosis and treatment. How is neuroscience applied to media and communication discourse analysis? Neuroscience informs media and communication discourse analysis by media engagement, investigating how the brain processes narratives in various media forms to understand what makes content engaging and memorable. Advertising and persuasion, analyzing how persuasive language affects neural processes related to decision-making and emotion. Social media discourse, exploring how the brain processes the rapid, fragmented discourse typical of social media and its impact on cognition and social behavior. What are the challenges of integrating neuroscience with discourse analysis? Challenges include complexity of neural data. Neural data can be difficult to interpret, especially when linking specific brain regions to discourse functions. Individual differences. Variations in brain structure and function can complicate the generalization of findings. Ethical considerations. Issues such as privacy and the potential misuse of neuroimaging data, as well as the ethical implications of using neuroscience to influence discourse in areas like education or marketing. How does neuroscience contribute to a deeper understanding of discourse? Neuroscience contributes to a deeper understanding of discourse by bridging the gap between linguistic behavior and the underlying neural mechanisms. It offers insights into how the brain processes language in social contexts, how cognitive functions shape discourse, and how discourse influences neural activity and cognitive functions. This interdisciplinary approach provides a more comprehensive view of how language operates at both behavioral and neural levels.